Hello, hello. Yes, good afternoon and a warm welcome to our little session, Underperformance in Refrigeration, a Technical Challenge. There has been a slight change in title to the printed program, and also I noticed it's actually marked as a presentation in German, but in order to reach a wider audience, we're doing this in English. Is that okay for everyone? There are German native speakers. I happen to be a German native speaker as well, so please feel free to ask any questions in German. Which actually brings me to the first point, a little excursion into who we are and what we do. Just to clear it up, sometimes we internally even refer to ourselves as Eurovent, but there are several Eurovents. There is Eurovent Association, the industry association, and there is us. We are Eurovent Certification. We are very friendly with one another. We are sort of like sister companies with a very similar shareholder structure, and we do common events. And to make matters even more interesting, there's also Eurovent Market Intelligence, which is like a standalone division of Eurovent Certification. We are not a French company. I would like to stress that. We are spread out all over Europe. I think we speak 20 languages internally. We're in the UK. We're now in Germany, Poland, India. So we are spread all over Europe, like the name suggests, and we operate internationally. Sometimes I'm asked, what's the difference between certification and labeling? Doesn't have anything to do with one another. Certification is quite a complex process that you go through in order to achieve it. My name is Tim Kroeger. I happen to be located in Germany. I'm working as a sales manager at Eurovent Certificierung Deutschland. Yes. So, what does underperformance actually mean? If we try to define it, an underperformance is simply a deviation, a negative deviation of actual performance versus published or declared data by the manufacturer. And note that I say performance rather than capacity. This is one of the very rare occasions where the English language is actually more precise than the German language, because we only have one word, Leistung, if anyone is familiar with the German language. But performance is much more than just capacity. It can refer to sound level, vibration, energy consumption, and such. The technical aspects include lower than expected energy efficiency. Let's not forget that even heat exchanger can have an energy efficiency that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with a refrigeration plant. Think about, for instance, dry coolers in combination of chillers. The energy consumption of the fans can be as high as 20% of the overall energy consumption of the system. So it's not negligible at all. If we have a lower than expected capacity, for a dry cooler, for instance, it means that the fans reach full speed at a lower ambient temperature if they want to maintain same supply water temperature. We have suboptimal heat transfer rates, which means insufficient cooling capacity, or alternatively lowering of the evaporating and therefore suction pressure. So the first 2 points are kind of connected. And then lastly, if the system works harder to achieve the expected result, then we can expect an accelerated degradation and increased operational stress with the related maintenance increase. So how is a component for a HVAC-R system selected? Well, the specifiers, that could be consulting engineers, end users, technical managers, they have to rely on the published data by the manufacturers. And if they underperform, we can expect high energy consumption, maintenance overloads, long-term operational inefficiencies, particularly in regard to the operational expenditure. And in the worst case scenario, if the cooling outcome or the result is not achieved, we will have to look at retrofitting, replacing, or complete system failure. I want to watch the time a little bit before we go into the... Yeah, we're pretty good. So let's jump right into a case study, and we have selected non-certified CO2 gas coolers. At this point, why did we select CO2 gas coolers? Is there anything wrong with CO2 refrigeration in general? Absolutely not. CO2 is a great refrigerant. It's not a new refrigerant. As a matter of fact, the history of CO2 as a refrigerant goes back many, many decades. Has experienced a bit of a renaissance with the phase out of HCFCs and HFCs. Lately, we as Eurovent Certification fully support the use of natural refrigerants. So I would like to make that 100% clear. As a matter of fact, some of our programs are specifically tailored to cater for low GWP and natural refrigerants. I forgot to mention earlier, Eurovent Certification, we have 44 certification programs ranging over 4 different areas. That's comfort, thermodynamics, ventilation, and refrigeration. Refrigeration is what we are here to promote within our range. So 44 programs. So I'd like to gauge the audience. Who of you has dealt with CO2 as a refrigerant? Hands up. Not that many. Yeah, of course, yeah. How many of you are sort of familiar with the thermodynamic concepts of CO2 refrigeration? Hands up. Yeah, that's a few. Very good, very good. So I can abbreviate that a little bit. See, people sometimes say that CO2 is like a funny refrigerant because it's got some funny properties. As a matter of fact, it's just a completely normal refrigerant. You know, we have the same sort of shape of the wet vapor area. We have the isotopes, we have the isothermals. It's just that CO2 has a very low critical point, 31 degrees as a matter of fact. So in most refrigeration applications, the process, the compression cycle process works in the transcritical area. There's a couple of oddities or peculiarities. For instance, the fact that because of the shape of the isothermals, which by the way is exactly the same sort of general shape as for any other refrigerant, but because of that sort of curved area on the left, there are instances where an increase in CO2 gas cooler pressure leads to an increase in COP. That's one thing. The other thing is that for the heat rejection, there are some thermodynamic aspects that are not fully understood. And as a matter of fact, and I don't want to blow my own horn, but I have been working with companies like Danfoss and Bitzer for a long, long time. So CO2 has been in development for componentry for at least 20 years. But when I looked at the heat rejection aspects, I thought, how did that work? So it took me a day to fully sort of comprehend it. So don't be alarmed if it looks a little bit complicated. What do we have here? Here we have the, is there a laser pointer by any chance? We did. Oh, not really. Oh, well. Here we look at the heat rejection process, which is basically the reduction of enthalpy of the refrigerant at different gas cooler pressures. And once again, because we are working in the supercritical area here, because of the shape of the isothermals, we have 2 completely different heat rejection scenarios. What do the different colors represent? Well, the green bar along the heat rejection process indicates heat transfer at a very high temperature differential between the CO2 temperature and the ambient temperature. In this case, up to 60 Kelvin. The red portion of that bar represents heat transfer at a very low temperature differential. In this case, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, around 4K. And we all know the basic formula for heat transfer. Q equals area multiplied by heat transfer coefficient multiplied by temperature differential. In other words, if I transfer heat at a very low temperature differential, it sort of eats up a lot of surface. In the first instance, at 90 bar, we have 15% of the total heat rejection transferred at the low temperature differential of 4K. And in the second example, it's 37K. So kind of counterintuitively, because we all know, lowering the head pressure is good for system efficiency. That is not the case with CO2. Because we transfer a lot of enthalpy difference or heat at a lower temperature differential, the overall thermal capacity at a lower gas cooler pressure, deviating from the standard conditions, 90 bar and 110 degree CO2 inlet temperature, is in fact much, much lower. I personally don't like slides with a lot of numbers. We can probably shorten that a little bit. What did we actually do for this analysis? We took 48 heat exchangers from the market and we looked at the published data. So in this instance, we didn't do any actual testing. We just used data sheets and manufacturers' selection software to analyze data. Over there, we have the composition in terms of kilowatt. We sort of randomly selected typical sizes in the market. And on this side, we have the standard conditions at which we, and this is very important, at which we took the declared capacity by the manufacturer at face value. Then we use the data sheets or the selection software to move away from the standard conditions, because the standard conditions don't really reflect Northern European conditions. So it's more like C3, C2. And here are the correction factors that need to be applied to the capacities at standard conditions to then arrive at the capacity at conditions deviating from those. One word about the correction factors. People ask me, where do they come from? Did you kind of think about them, or are they randomly, or what is the story with that? And this gives me an opportunity to explain the transparency with which we work at Eurovent Certification. These correction factors are part of our so-called TCRs. They are the technical certification rules, and these are governed by the so-called PCs, which are the program committees. And the program committees, they do not only consist of our own experts, like thermodynamic heat exchanger experts, they also consist of industry experts from participating company, very, very well-known technical experts, third-party laboratory technical experts. So, and they decide on these correction factors. So it is a true independent industry consensus. So, and then we had a look, and lo and behold, if we run a non-certified CO2 gas cooler through different conditions, from right to left, here you see the standard conditions, we see that there is almost no correction factor, which is weird. That's thermodynamically impossible, you know? So add a typical Northern European condition, say 82 bar CO2 gas cooler pressure, we have a difference of up to 20%, right? So when we analyze our data analysis, we come to the conclusion that 100% of the analyzed non-certified CO2 gas coolers had a deviation, an underperformance in terms of their heat reduction. These underperformances ranged from a moderate 12% to up to 31%. And remember what I said before, this is based on taking the stated capacity at standard conditions SC20 at face value. And the big question is that the case? So that can only be checked by actual product testing. So if we compare the energy consumption, once again, here's a slide with a lot of data. From the data of the simulation, I would assume that this is a larger supermarket. The reason why I'm saying that is because the 250 kilowatt for medium temperature, that's kind of like a big Rewe or Kaufland market. And also the low temp capacity sort of fits into that. Design ambient temperature 30 degree, maximum operating pressure 9 bar, and simulated at 490 kilowatt gas cooler capacity. This is how it looks like. Once again, the green line, that is the CO2 outlet temperature. The blue squares, that indicates the gas cooler pressure. The evaporating temperature in this case stays pretty much the same. I don't have actually a y-axis for that. No, that would be medium temp. And the red one is the total heat reduction capacity of the CO2 gas cooler. So once again, moving away from the standard condition, a reduction. We have assumed an energy cost of 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which I think is quite realistic. At least that's what I'm paying at home. And we have assumed an CO2 energy mix of 400 gram per kilowatt hour, which I think is also realistic, particularly if we look at France, of course. It used to be about 600 to 700 gram per kilowatt hour in the old days when we had a lot of coal power plants here in Germany. The overall cost per year is a sweet 455,000 euro compared to the non-certified. Oh, sorry, this was actually incorrect. 436,000 euro for the certified, 455 for the non-certified. So in the result, we see that there is quite a significant difference, 18,000 euro per year. Even if we consider an expected lower capex for the non-certified, because it's most likely to be smaller, claiming to have the same capacity, the payback times range from between 2.5 and 4 years. But more importantly, and everyone is talking about decarbonization, as a matter of fact, decarbonization is in the mission statement of large companies, at least in Germany these days. Only this one system provides a CO2 footprint reduction of 25 tons per year for this one system. Now, if you think about a company like Rewe, for instance, I keep referring to them because I know them quite well. They operate 3,700 supermarkets in Germany. 3,700 times this number is an awful, awful lot. We're actually pretty much on time. One more thing, when we compare like the different levels of, let's say, declaration of certification, in-house laboratory testing, independent laboratory testing, and the product certification through Eurovent. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically, it's quite clear. You have a lot of tick marks on the right and none on the left. For instance, software certification, when we do the certification, I said before that it's much more than just product testing. We do a so-called desk study where we analyze data. If some data fall outside what I call the plausible data cloud, we ask questions. We certify the software in regards to correction factors, for instance. So the recommendation is simply that we must acknowledge the impact of overstated performances, in particular capacities in the market. Manufacturers should not be afraid of certification or independent laboratory testing. We're here to actually provide a service that enables the industry to be more transparent and to enable a fairer competition, a fairer, more transparent competition. And in particular, the key decision makers, and that's the consulting engineers, the technical directors of large end users and the like, need to simply include certification as a qualifier rather than a differentiator. And the simplest way to trust product performance is to include the requirement for certification in the project specification. And with that, I think I am pretty much on time. So please feel free to ask any questions. Well, a question that I've been asked is, can you estimate the percentage of non-certified products that show underperformance? Not really, because we took a sample, and the sample showed 100% of these samples had underperformance. I'm a little bit hesitant to extrapolate that into the whole market. Also, if you look at some manufacturers, they have up to 20,000 different product configurations. That is obviously impossible to go through all of them. But with this analysis, and this is actually only part of a much bigger analysis that we are doing at the moment, where we analyze a lot of data, check the heat transfer, does it make sense, or have they reinvented the laws of physics by arriving at a heat transfer coefficient that is simply not realistic.
Surprise.
Yeah, but it clearly shows that certification helps the market to achieve very realistic, very transparent performance claims. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your attention. And last thing, I would very much encourage you to download our white paper on this topic. So you can actually scan this with your mobile phone right now, and you directly get the white paper. We have a couple of copies in English language on our booth. What's our booth number again? It's
Hall 7,
714 in Hall 7. It's just behind that wall. Come and see us for more information. This is my email address. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.